Hi, Ed. Could you tell us where you were on December 7th, 1941, and how old you were when the war began?
December the 7th. Oh. I was walking to an ice cream place with 4 other guys, and I wrecked my father's car. We rolled the car over, and 2 of them went to the hospital. And when we got out of the hospital and came home, we found out that Pearl Harbor had happened. And nobody knew where it was. But my father knew where it was. He had been there. You know, he told us it was in Hawaii.
Because he had previously been in the Navy.
Oh yeah, he'd been in there 12 years. And he was in World War I.
So you were in high school at the time and 16 years old?
Yeah, I was in high school. But that was December 7th. And in 2 months, I was 17.
And then in June 1942, you graduated from high school?
Right. But before, I graduated in late June, and the boys in Catholic school graduated in early June, and they wanted me to join the Marine Corps. But they wouldn't wait for me. They went a month earlier. But then when I graduated, I went down, joined the Marine Corps, but I was only 17. And you had to have your father's permission. You had to sign it. And then I went home and he wouldn't sign it.
Because he was a Navy man and he didn't want you joining the
Navy 12
Marines.
years. So he said, can I join the Navy? So I went down, joined the Navy. Came back and he signed it. Big mistake. Well, no, I didn't know anything. You know, I was only 17.
So where did you go from there after you joined the...
Well, I joined with 4 other guys, all friends of mine. 3 of them went to Jacksonville, Florida, and I went to Bainbridge, Maryland, because they were 18 and I was 17. See, when you're 17, you can't join the reserve, the Naval Reserve. You join the regular Navy for what's called a minority cruise, from 17 to 21. That's why they sent them to Florida, and they sent me to...
So you went for your 8 weeks of boot camp in Bainbridge,
right,
Maryland?
They sent me to signal school to learn how to be a signalman.
On a cruiser or destroyer or what?
Well, no, they just sent me to Chicago for 3 more months to learn to be a signalman. Then they sent me to San Francisco, and that's where I got on the cruiser, and we went out. Well, we went out one day, they said we were going out for gunnery practice. We didn't come back for 9 months.
And you were on a cruiser out there in the Pacific then?
Mm.
Where in the Pacific, and
Well,
what were your duties on the ship?
Well, I was a signalman. Now, there were 15 destroyers and 3 cruisers. And we were anti-submarine. We had all this new radar equipment. And they would see submarines on the radar, and we'd go in the area and drop all these depth charges, and hopefully blow them up. But before that, we went to the Aleutians.
The Aleutian Islands off of Alaska.
The Japanese invaded. Kiska and that too.
So that they held several islands up there.
Yeah, so that we bombed it for about 4 or 5 days. We went ashore, they had all gone. They all slipped out at night.
So this would have been early 1943?
Yeah. And they, but their remnants were there, you know, planes were there. And they had 2-man submarines and 1-man submarines. Can you imagine getting in a submarine with the torpedoes? Just big enough to hold you and the torpedo. But from there we went on to, we chased them. Because this radar was a new thing. And it would give you these blips. And then when all 18 vessels would dash off somewhere. But the first torpedo I saw was fired by our own destroyer and almost hit us. Plus they were all live ammunition. There's a lot of accidents like that. Yeah, we were hit one time with a depth charge from another destroyer. and put a big hole in their side.
So what were your daily duties on the ship? You were the
Oh,
signalman on the
I
ship?
thought
What
it
does
was
a
gonna be-
signalman do on the ship?
See, all these ships maneuver by flag hoists because a 500-foot ship doesn't turn on a dime. It takes a great big radius to turn. And they turn in columns usually. So there's a ship 500 yards ahead of you and one 500 yards behind you. And to make these turns, you've got to be an expert seaman. You know, the officer of the day gives all the commands. And if he cuts it too short, you ride up on the fantail of the ship in front of you, which is good. And if you take it too wide, you get out of line and you'll run into the destroyers. So they do all this by flag hoist. They run up a flag that represents T and one that represents 9, and they'll say turn 90, and everybody gets them up. And then the admiral on the one ship, when he tells the signalman to put them all down, they all come down, all the ships turn at the same time. Because you learn all this in signal school, and all officers learn it in Annapolis. And it works very well. But then they have flashing light. You're always communicating with the other ships because they're about 500 yards apart. And you know, the water's going up and down. And the ship will have steering control, and we'll have to leave it. And they do all that by flashing light because the Japanese had all these listening devices for radio. See, we were close to Japan. Because we left the Aleutian Islands and went to the Pribilof Islands, which is north of Japan. What we were doing was blocking the Japanese Navy from coming across the Pacific Ocean to Oregon. But it was, I had all those duties while you were maneuvering. But I thought it was going to be an easy job. Because it's supposed to be 4 hours off, 4 hours on and 8 hours off. See, a watch is 4 hours long. From midnight to 4 in the morning is a watch, it's 4 hours. So you think, oh boy, that's great. If I work midnight to 4 in the morning, I'll be off 8 to noon and noon to 4. But if you did that, you'd get the same watch every night. So rather than have a 4 in the afternoon to an 8 at night 4-hour watch, they have what's called, they separate that into 2 dog watches. From 4 in the afternoon to 6 in the afternoon is 1 watch. And from 6 to 8 is another watch. So, for example, if you have the 12 to 4, midnight to 4 in the morning, that's your watch. Then you're off from 4 in the morning to 8 in the morning, and from 8 in the morning till noon. Right? So you're off those 8 hours. But now the next watch is a dog watch. So you're on for those 2 hours. No, that's not right. Let's see. Yeah, let's start again. You start at midnight to 4. You're off 4 to 8 and 8 to noon. Yeah, that's right. So, okay. So then you're on from noon to 4 more hours. Now, instead of getting 8 off, you have 2 dog watches. You're off 4 to 6 and 6 to 8. So you're back on 8 o'clock at night. Then you work 8 to midnight. So in that one day, you've been on watch 12 hours, right? That's the toughest day, and that happens every 3rd day.
So you had to get your sleep from 4
Well,
a.m.
now wait a minute. I thought
noon.
On that watch, mid to 4. Oh boy, that's great. We get down in our bunks about 10 to 4 for the other watches up there. Well, at 6:30, they blow general quarters. They sound this bugle alarm. General quarters. Everybody has to man their stations because they've sighted the enemy. They read a blip on the radar. Now, my general quarters station was as a relief gunner on a 20mm cannon. So, here, I've been on the bridge from midnight to 4 in the morning. I get back to bed, 10 to 4. And of course they wake you up at 6 o'clock anyhow to go have breakfast. So while you're having breakfast, they sound an alarm called general quarters. So 6:30, I'm back up on this 20 millimeter. Well, I'm a relief gunner there. The regular gunner's on there. And you're waiting for whatever's going to happen. You know, they spotted Japanese planes or whatever. Well, most of the time, they've just spotted them and they don't come our way. So you're up there till about 9 o'clock in the morning. So, then they sound retreat or whatever, which means everybody goes back to what they were doing. Well, if you're off watch, I thought, well, I'll go back and lie down. But you can't lie down. They don't let you lie down during the day. So, my duties when I was off watch was to update the signal book. There's a giant signal book. It's about 18 inches thick. See, if you run across a ship out there in the middle of the Pacific, you send them a question by flag hoist, which says, identify yourself and give us the signal, the Allied signal for the day. There's a different one each day. And he looks at his big signal book and he says, oh, it's April 13th, 1943. He sends that signal. If it's correct, we say it's okay, and we go on our merry way. But if he doesn't know it, then he's the enemy. And then, because there's other procedures, you either fire at him or... Well, to keep this up to date, because they send these out about every 3 months to keep it up to date, to all the ships everywhere. And my job was to keep that up to date. You write down in the signal book what all those things are. So they were my duties during the day. The only time you can sleep is after dinner in the evening and before 6 o'clock in the morning. So if you're not on watch, you can sleep. But it's madness, because that's your worst day, that day where you start at midnight.
Well, was there any time for recreation? I mean, what was there to do when you're off?
No, there was no recreation.
There was no recreation?
Well, there was, we had our recreation during the watch. See, when you're signaling, you standing on the bridge. Now, there were no lights during the war. So you're up there, say on that watch, midnight to 4. It's pitch black. But you're up there as a lookout. Now, we had 5 guys up there. Now, they only have, I don't know, if you're ever in the sea, one side's always windy. And they call that the windward side. Well, we only put one signalman over there because it's terrible. The wind's always... and the 4 other guys would be on the other side. And he would change about every half hour.
Okay. So you did this periodically, too?
Well, every day.
Oh, you did that? That was part of your
where
duty?
you stood your watch.
Oh, that was
every
the watch.
Day.
Okay. And
as long as they're... Well, see, they didn't send any signals at night.
What would happen if you fell asleep on your watch?
Oh, well, they said you would be shot. But I fell asleep several times, standing up. One time I was... well, these 20 millimeter cannon machine guns had an incline bulletproof shield. And it was a perfect incline. It was about 30 degrees off of vertical. And you just lean back there. I mean, well, you didn't get much sleep, so you'd go to sleep. Of course, you had the helmet on and all this
and
gear.
It's pitch black, yeah.
It's pitch black. And the ship is rolling and rocking. Of course, if it's moonlight, you know, you can see. But I often fell asleep there. But they would come, oh, you had midnight rations. If you had what was called the midnight watch, from midnight to 4, they'd send somebody to the galley to get a hot loaf of bread, just baked, and a can of Spam. And I love Spam. And I also was the official sandwich maker, because, see, we had 5 guys, and I could make 10 sandwiches out of a can of Spam and a loaf of bread. Which means I had to cut the bread, slice it, 20 slices, and then slice the ham, the Spam. So that broke up the night. Oh, now the first night I was on watch, this is funny. The supervisor of the watch was a third class. The uniform shows a third class quartermaster. This was a third class signalman. He liked me immediately. And he said, Ed, you can go down early. You can go down 3:30. Just wake up these 5 guys that are going to replace us. Now here I am, 17 or 18 by then. And they're spread all over this ship. But he told me all these compartments they were in. Now the reason they were spread all over the ship, in case you were torpedoed, and we all slept in the same place, say all the signalmen and radiomen, they'd kill the whole communications division. So that's why they put radiomen and signalmen, all the different rates in different places. Well, I thought, this is great. I'm getting off a half hour early. I go down there and wake up these guys. Oh, now they told me, the way you wake up somebody, oh, incidentally, everybody smoked. Now there's 3 tiers, these decks. These bunks. It's about 18 inches between them. I had a terrible time finding all these guys. But the thing was, you lit a cigarette, you shook them up, woke them up, and as soon as they woke up and said, oh, you put the cigarette in their mouth and said, you better get up now, you're smoking. No, it was fine. I woke up 4 guys. Then I woke up this guy I'd seen around. Oh, toughest guy I ever saw in my life. Really, muscles all over him. And I'm shaking him lightly. Come on, get up, get up. It's 25 or 4. Shaking him. The guy is grumbling and grousing. So I light a cigarette, put his mouth. I said, oh, you got a cigarette in the mouth now? Are you awake? Are you awake? And the guy growled anyhow. I left him and went aft where my bunk was and went to sleep. Well, the next day, I'd forgotten all about that. The next day, this guy grabbed me down at the chow hall. Really lifted me right off my feet. He told me to wake him up harder. That he caught a lot of hell because they had to send somebody down there to get him. He fell back asleep. I said, how about the cigarette? How about the cigarette? So I went out. But he really gave me hell. So the next time I had a watch, they sent me down. I kicked him, did everything to him. He came out of that bunk and lifted me off the deck again. Well, needless to say, I told the supervisor, watch, I don't want that job anymore. I said, but you get off of him. I don't care. I don't want it anymore.
Was there ever an occasion where where you had fallen asleep and a supervisor of the watch walked by?
Oh, no, an officer came up one night. We're steaming along. And I heard this faraway voice saying, are you awake? Are you awake? Or are you asleep? Are you asleep? I opened my eyes and the guy nose to nose with me. I said, are you sleeping? I said, no, of course not. I'm not sleeping. I'm answering your question. He could have been there for 3 days. I didn't know. And then he was the one that told me, you realize you could be shot. But guys often fell asleep. Because you didn't have any time to sleep. I figured it out. If you slept every moment that you could, you could get away and go down there and sleep, you'd only get about 5 hours a day. But now, when we went into a port, you would get 4 on and 16 off. So now and again, we would, the first time we went into an island, I thought, oh, this will be great. We'll have 4 on and 8 and 16 off. We were there for 2 days, and all we did was load stores, food and ammunition. Everybody loaded ammunition. 500 sailors, just loading all this ammunition. It was just a chain of guys. You went down the gangplank, picked up a 6-inch shell or 6-inch powder, whatever. For days. All the waking days.
Where were these ports, up in the Aleutian Islands?
Oh no, this was further south. Or the Pribilofs or somewhere. Oh, and we'd load 4 food stores. They loaded I can remember they were saying after we loaded all these things. Of course, I just, they told me where to pick this up and where to take it. Like, pick up this crate, and took it to the galley. Well, some of those crates had fruit cocktail in them. Quart cans of fruit cocktail. And they said they loaded 100 cases. They picked up 100 cases off the wharf. 12 of them got to the galley. Can you imagine that? 88 cases. Now, each one of these cases had about 6 quarts of fruit cocktail. No, I didn't take any, but some months later, I was standing once again, I was leaning back on a 20 millimeter cannon, which was my favorite place. And a sailor came up, a seaman or a gunner's mate, not a signalman. Said, "Hey, mate, you want some fruit cocktail?" I said, "Oh, I'd love some." Guy hands me a quart can of fruit cocktail, no spoon. I was like, "Well, how are you supposed to eat that?" And he put his big grubby hand there and took it. I didn't enjoy that fruit cocktail, no spoon. But things like that were an absolute delight, though. But my craving after about 6, 7 months was for a chocolate soda. Of course, these older guys, they wanted a beer or something. But now and again, we would go to some sandbar somewhere. I never knew where the hell we were. Like, we'd be south, and we'd pull in, be some speck out there in the middle of nowhere. We'd pull in, and it'd be this tiny little olive full of supplies. I mean, all kinds of supplies. Now, sometimes we couldn't go in with the big cruiser, and we anchor out about 100 yards. And then we'd all get in these little Liberty boats to go ashore. And they'd have Valentine ale. Oh, and these guys drink themselves into oblivion. It was as though they were unleashed. And we had to carry them back. Wow. But I thought it was great, the first month or so. Blue sky, big sunsets, but you never saw any land. And from the ship to the horizon was 12 miles. That's your limit of your vision. But any direction you looked, you didn't see anything but water. And that's no fun after, 5 months, 6 months. And the food starts running down. In the beginning, we had great food. All kinds of mashed potatoes and steaks. But then after a while, it's a stew and soups. But on Wednesdays and Saturdays, the bakers made sugar donuts for breakfast, and you had beans and sugar donuts.
So the sugar donuts were kind of a delicacy, huh?
Oh yeah, well, but of course I didn't like beans at all. I know I wouldn't like them for breakfast. But I would trade those for a donut. You got 2 donuts. So I always took the beans, and you always ran across somebody who would trade you a donut for this pot of beans. Oh, now that's an interesting story. When I first got there, when we went to sea, they had these wooden tables that were on the ceiling. It's called overhead. And all these mess cooks lowered them down when you got ready to eat. Of course, it's cafeteria style, and you go through there. And this wooden table had a little edge around it, so that your tray wouldn't slide off. We go through the line, got the tray. Then they had benches. Of course, I sat at this table by myself, because I didn't know anybody. And the ship is rolling sideways. So I had to hold my hand, my left hand, so that the tray wouldn't slide over on the other side. Now, when another sailor would come on the other side, it was just big enough to hold 2. So his would hold you in, because he had a ledge on his side, and you had a barrier on your side, and then they would be stuck. So I was holding that in my hand when this big salt came down. And he sat at the other end of the table. And I was going to watch him out of my left eye, see how he did it. He takes a big knife out of his holster, cans in the middle of the table, and it was a good idea. Then he could use 2 hands to eat. That knife prevented the tray from sliding over. So I wrote my mother a letter to send me a knife. Which she did, incidentally. I think I had an old Boy Scout knife that she sent me. And that's what I used to cut the bread around.
Did you ever engage in any battles or close to any battles?
Yeah, we were always going after these submarines. And we would find them and drop bombs on them. And sometimes they'd bubble up.
Didn't you tell me there was an occasion once where when you were out on watch, you found out later that you were supposed to be looking for some Japanese destroyers, or what was that story?
Oh no, I went to reunion in New Orleans just last year. And I met these guys from our ship.
What was the name of the ship?
U.S.S. Detroit. And, of course, we had a guy fall off one time. And the ship behind us picked him up. See, a man overboard was considered a man lost. They wouldn't turn around and pick him up because they wouldn't risk all the people on the ship for one. Well, anyhow, at this reunion in New Orleans, everybody was concerned that they couldn't remember the name of the guy who had fallen off and was picked up. And the guy who'd asked me about it also asked me about when we were off Japan, did I know why we were so close? And I said, well, we were chasing these submarines. He said, oh, no. He said, we were trying to lure the Japanese fleet back out. They still had some aircraft carriers, but they wouldn't leave the territorial waters of Japan.
So they were using the cruisers to lure them out,
Yeah,
so that our destroyers.
Yeah. I don't know how he knew it, but I didn't know it. Yeah, because we had.
And that way, the destroyers would be able to. Our destroyers would be able to.
Yeah, this carrier, the plan was if these carriers saw just 3 cruisers and 15 destroyers, they could come out and sink those easily. Fortunately, they didn't come out because we weren't attacked. But we were attacked by airplanes, dropped bombs on us. But we were very fortunate.
They missed.
We had our greatest danger was from the United States Navy. Now, we were hit twice accidentally by other ships firing. But it was.
So there were no casualties though on your.
Yeah, we had casualties at Pearl Harbor though. That ship, I wasn't on it then, but the ship was at Pearl Harbor when Pearl Harbor was bombed. But it got underway. Was able to get out of the harbor.
Oh, during the attack?
Yeah. So that was the problem. The entire fleet was tied up at the docks. And most of the fleet was in Honolulu.
Well, we lost 2,400 men at Pearl Harbor.
Yeah, well, our ship lost about 33 guys on Pearl Harbor. But they did get the ship underway and out to sea and fired back. But the guys that were there were still there when I got on the ship. They said it was pandemonium. And they were so excited, these 20mm cannon had no stops on them. They'd follow a Japanese plane and came sink their own ship. They just went on around. Then they put stops on them so they couldn't do that.
But personally, after several months on this ship, it was getting a little monotonous for you?
Oh, it was grossly monotonous. And, well, it was the same thing every day. The problem.
Well, what did you do to, you took some tests to, for officer
they were
school?
Always soliciting for sailors to go on the PT boats and on to submarines. And each day they would put that on the bulletin board. And I applied for all those things. And they also advertised for naval pilots. This whole list of requirements, and I put in for that. And the fellow I put in with hadn't told me about it. He and I used to put in for everything, submarine duty, and you go down and take all these battery tests.
So what did you finally get?
Well, I finally got the United States Air Force cadet appointment.
To become you had
Become
to
a pilot,
yeah. Okay. So you would go to school and become a
Yeah,
commissioned
but
officer and
I got
study to
it.
be a pilot.
I didn't even know it. About 10 guys on our ship took it, but everybody on the 7th Fleet, they took 2 guys from the 7th Fleet, another sailor and me, rather. But it took us 3 months before we came back, after we took the test.
You took the test and then
Well, the test was more a oral examination with the officers in the boardroom. Actually, it was, I consider myself very fortunate. See, at sea, during the war, it was not rigid discipline. People wore red sweaters, they let their hair grow, didn't shave. And I went a long time without shaving until I just woke up one morning and felt uncomfortable. And I shaved. And then I went down below decks and paid a guy 25 cents for a haircut. Had a guy down there who would cut your hair for 25 cents. You sit on this bucket, cut your hair. And then another guy used to do my laundry. And I got all cleaned, put pressed clothes on, and just by dumb luck, they called my name over the PA system to come to the wardroom, and I didn't know why. I'd forgotten about applying for this. And they gave me an oral examination. It had 7 hours.
oh, you had applied 3 months earlier.
Oh, yeah, in writing.
Okay.
But they asked a lot of questions about things that I'd had in high school, and they were amazed that I'd had it in high school. Geometry, and
Trigonometry and calculus.
differential calculus, descriptive geometry, analytic geometry. Well, the high school I went to was strictly a technical engineering high school. So they were impressed by that. But I credit it to, I just got all cleaned that day.
Made a good appearance.
Yeah.
So
And
you
by that time, I'd been on there about 6, 8 months. I could find time to read. I found a guy I played chess with. But you had to find these things. In the beginning, it just...
So where did they send you once you were
Oh, well, when I...
accepted to go to the pilot school? Where was this?
Well, then it was a couple more months. We got hit by a ship. We were loading fuel from a Russian tanker, and it tore off one of our gun turrets. So we had to go back to Bremerton, Washington, to have that repaired. And when we got back there is when they transferred me off the ship. Then and again, I was supposed to report I had 30 days to report to San Diego. And that was in Bremerton, Washington. Now, I asked the chief yeoman, did I have to go right away? He said, oh no, it'll take 30 days. So I told him where I lived, in Baltimore. He said, oh, you live all the way over there? You got to go all the way across the country and all the way back. He said, I'll just change those orders and have you report to Philadelphia. Nice guy. So that's what I did.
When would this have been?
Oh, this was like late 44 by then. 44. So then I went to Philadelphia, and then they sent me to Villanova.
To college?
Well,
I mean, it was
the story was they didn't, not enough pilots had been killed. So they had all these guys ready to become pilots.
But they didn't really need them yet.
They didn't need them, so rather than send them back, they thought, See, during peacetime, you're supposed to have 2 years of college. And they said, well, if we don't need them right away, we'll give them 2 years of college.
Oh, where had you gone for your pilot's training, though? Or had you yet?
We went to, well, first we took the 2 years of college.
Oh, you were going to take that first before they
Yeah,
taught
but
you how
they
to fly.
did 3 semesters in a year. And then they sent us down to the Carolinas. Yeah. University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, for pre-flight. And then they taught us to fly Cubs. And then started the basic training. And then by that time the war ended.
Well, when were you up at Brown University? After the
Well, no, that was part of the 4 semesters. So I took 2 semesters at
Villanova?
Villanova, and then they sent us up to Brown.
Oh, so like by the summer of 45, you were sent down to
Yeah,
Chapel
well, we
Hill,
went to
North
New York to
Carolina.
learn to fly, and a Floyd Battlefield. And then the war ended.
Well, so you were more or less just beginning your training as a pilot.
Right.
And you had gotten 3 semesters then at college?
4.
4, you got 4.
Yeah,
2 at Villanova and 2
at Brown, yeah.
2 at Brown. Well, where were you when the war ended? Were you at Brown?
No, I was in North Carolina.
So in August 1945, you were down there for pilot training, and the war
Right.
ended. So what did they tell you?
Well, they
then?
gave us our choice. We could resign or stay in. And I resigned, which turned out to be great because the guys that stayed in, they called them back in for the Korean War. That worked out beautifully. Couldn't have been better.
So, and by the Korean War, you were married and had 2
right.
small
But
children.
that didn't make any difference. They called them back. See, Ted Williams was one of those guys.
Baseball player.
Yeah.